That sounded like a tiny, tiny train. I'm half blending into this chair. Can you even see me right now? I can't see me. To understand the concept of lucid dreaming, you just need a basic understanding of what the body goes through during sleep. Potentially a deep spiritual understanding of the mind will also help, but it's not 100% essential. Lucid dreaming isn't a term I heard until I was in like my late teens, but the idea of being in a dream and being able to control it from within obviously wasn't a really alien concept. There are plenty of TV shows and films pre-inception depicting some kind of in-dream awareness. In everything from just recognizing an unusually sinister scenario and pinching yourself to try and wake up, to being completely aware that you're in a dream and being like, I could do anything, I'm gonna fly, and everything in between. I'd always had a few experiences as a child with nightmares where everything would become so terrifying that I'd question what was happening. How can this be happening? This is so unlike my normal life. What's going on? Is this real? Am I in a dream? And then I'd wake up. But that was it. The knowledge that I was dreaming is what would wake me up. But my experience with actual lucid dreaming was very, very gradual. A few times when I was little, I'd had this recurring dream where I was on this adventure with a group of people, and there was a point where I had to choose whether to carry on with them along a path through a garden or stop under this really low-hanging willow tree. The first time I had the dream, I decided to carry on with them down the path through the garden, and it'd been the wrong decision, and it just left me with this weird, unsettled kind of feeling. A little while later, I don't remember if it was over the span of like weeks or months, but I had the exact same dream. I was walking through this garden along the path with this group of people, and there was the willow tree. Only this time, I remembered, and I decided to go inside it. And as I did, all of the stress of the dream, all of the like unsettled feeling that had been hanging over it just faded away. And I woke up feeling like a weight had been lifted, like all these negative thoughts were just gone because I'd made that right decision. It's probably very representative of something deep in my psyche. But I woke up feeling really relaxed, but also kind of nervous because like, what? Much later in life, when I was a teenager, I had this series of recurring dreams from the exact same scenario over a span of just a few weeks. And I must have had the same dream like 3 or 4 times. I was on this giant like spaceship or space station or something, and basically we were going to crash. We needed to get everyone who was on board into these escape pods and stuff to get away. But then when one of the pods unexpectedly left without anyone in it, there weren't enough pods to go around, no matter how much we all stuffed together. And the first time I had the dream, it was so stressful. I remember like searching for all these cabinets and stuff for like instructions or tools that could help us bring it back or do something to fix the problem. I woke up from the dream quite gradually, and I remember as I was aware that I was waking up, I was getting really angry that I was waking up before I had the chance to solve the problem and work out what to do. Like I had no closure from it, and it just had this unfinished memory. Obviously now it's been so long that I don't remember the full details of the story. I don't know what I needed from the cabinets that would have helped, but I was definitely on the right track. A week or so later, I had the exact same dream, with full memory of the first time. And I remember it gave me a head start because I knew which cabinets to look in and I knew which tools I was looking for. Don't know what they were now, but it was relevant. Despite my best efforts, I almost got everybody off board safely. Almost. But then I woke up. And again, this was like genuinely disrupting my daily life. I was like sitting having coffee with my friends, like, damn, I should have looked in that other cupboard. It was when I had the exact same dream a third time a couple of weeks later that I was able to do it. I was able to get everybody off board safely using what I'd learnt both times before. And I haven't had it since, I think. And that kind of lucidity sits sort of in the middle somewhere. I knew that it had happened before and I knew what I needed to do, but at no point while in the dream did I know that it was a dream. While I was in it, the knowledge that I'd gained from the previous times just felt like this kind of overwhelming sense of destiny, with the right information unlocking at the right time. But I still found it fascinating. That must be like how Harry Potter feels. Felt. These are quite Gryffindor-y colours, aren't they? They're not meant to be. Well, they're meant to be because they're the, you know what I mean. But it's not my intention. I'm definitely not a Gryffindor. Sometime in summer, when I was about 15, I had a dream that completely changed my perspective on things. I don't remember anything leading up to this point, and I don't remember arriving in the dream. All I remembered was that I was in my teenage bedroom, you know, the pink and yellow one, and it had a dormer window on one side, one that like sticks out like that, and then a Velux window on the other side, one that like flipped like that. Thank you. It was nighttime. I was stood by the Velux window, and I flipped it open, and I stuck my head out into the outside. My mum and dad live on like quite a main road, but it can get dead quiet for just a couple of minutes at a time in the middle of the night. And it was dead quiet. No cars, no wind, no sound, no nothing. I stood up on the edge of the window ledge and I just stepped out into the air. And then I just like flew around for a bit at night on my parents' road, the street I grew up on, and everything looked right. And it was my exact street. Obviously, because I was flying, I knew it wasn't real, but I don't think I knew it was a dream. I was wearing like a t-shirt, a short sleeve t-shirt, but I couldn't feel the cold against my skin. And that feeling alone was enough for me to know that I was safe. Because I'm always cold. I'm the cold friend. So if I'm not feeling cold, someone's up. Because you know, in dreams, it doesn't feel like you're just perceiving things with your usual senses. Like you have this overall understanding. For example, when you're having a dream and someone turns up and the whole tone of the dream becomes really scary, because without everyone having to say anything, you know that they're there for like a sinister reason. You can almost feel their emotions and the emotions of all the other characters in the dream and the emotions of like the space. In the same way, when you're like in a building and it's your house, but it's not your house. I've had dreams where my workplace is my house. No one needs to tell me it's my house. I just know I live there and I know it's my house. Or like if I had a dream where like Adam is just my dad. Like he's just my dad. I don't know that because he says, hi, I'm your dad. He's just my dad and I just know that. It's a dream. I'm over-explaining this, you know what I mean. In the same way, this dream had this like overwhelming feeling of safety and security. And nothing else really happened. I just had my little fly, but I woke up and something had changed in me. That was one of those dreams where I woke up and I needed like the first few hours of being alive to kind of process the emotions that I was feeling and process what had just happened. Maybe because it was supposed to be something really spiritual for me. Maybe I was supposed to be a nun and that was my calling, and I just didn't listen properly. Hey sisters. I think it must have been in the next couple of months after that event that my first proper lucid dream experience happened. It was a normal dream, it was nighttime, I was walking along by this waterfront kind of area, maybe like a bay. I don't remember how I got there, I don't remember the start of the dream, I don't remember at what point I became lucid, but I just remember that for the first time ever, I 100% knew that I was in a dream. I knew this wasn't real, I knew I wasn't real, I knew the sky and the moonlight and the water weren't real. And I was so excited. I was like, this is so cool, I have to tell someone. So in a kind of confused state, I started looking for people and I spotted my friend Maggie. And I ran up to her to tell her about this exciting new phenomenon that I was experiencing. Because although I knew that what was around me wasn't real, I didn't quite have the clarity of perspective that my usual self does in the real world. My reasoning wasn't quite there. And I worked out how ridiculous it was that I was trying to talk to somebody I actually knew in real life as I started to speak to Maggie. But the second I realised that this Maggie had absolutely no connection to the real world Maggie, she just sort of faded away. And then she was just gone and I was on this pier on my own. And it was really lonely. But I was fascinated. So I did some research. I learned the term lucid dreaming and I spent ages reading about other people's experiences and meanings and different triggers for it and how other people had trained themselves to lucid dream right from going to bed. And I decided to give it another go. And thus begins the most intense sequence of dream events in my entire life. So my long stint of voluntary lucid dreaming started sometime after that because I read a technique online that worked for me a lot sometimes and not a lot at all other times. Basically what you need to do is just lie on your back, arms either side, breathe calmly, deeply, slowly, like you're already falling asleep, and hold that position completely still for as long as you possibly can. I always had to take special care to make sure that the covers were sitting right. My breath would like pull the covers here, and you need to be so still that you can't feel any kind of movement of any part of your body. Because what you're effectively trying to do is separate your mind from your body. All the recommendations said that basically if you lie there still for long enough, at some point your mind will send an itch to like a toe or something. And if you respond by scratching, then it's like, okay, we're still awake. But if you ignore the itch, then it might get convinced that your body has fallen asleep and allow itself to follow. I know, I'm not sure how much of that I believe, but for the purposes of this, people swear by it. But even just that part was a real issue for me because, as you may know, because I never shut up about it, I have really bad ADHD. So getting my body to be still is like impossible. I usually take between at least 45 minutes to an hour and a half to fall asleep. I'm just lying there for so long. So lying completely still was in itself a huge challenge, but I was willing to take that on in the name of science. So I lay there completely still, desperately stifling and restraining any little temptation for my legs to move. Obviously while doing this, my eyes were closed because I was trying to sleep. So I had no idea what the time was, but I would estimate that it happened after like half an hour, 45 minutes. I got the itch thing and I ignored it as per the instructions. Very, very rare for me to read and follow instructions for an activity, but there I was. I usually had my hands flat against the covers like this. And after a long time of keeping completely still, eventually my palms would get so used to the sensation of the duvet touching them that I couldn't feel it anymore. And once that happened, bam, I was in there. That was stage 1 complete. For me, I would start by trying to convince myself that my hands were facing the other way. They're facing this way. And I tried to concentrate really hard and convince myself that they're facing this way. And if I thought hard enough, I could almost feel the breeze on my palm and I could almost feel the covers touching the other side of them. And allowing myself to completely give into that feeling was my gateway. That's when I knew it was working, because suddenly my brain couldn't reliably tell me where my hands were in space. My hands were in space. I could imagine myself flipping my hands one way then the other, like this. And because I had no sensation or feeling on them to tell me otherwise, I could believe it and start to convince myself it was true. And then once my hands were free, everything else could follow. I started to use the shapes on the backs of my eyelids to back up what I told myself my body was doing. If I thought hard enough, I could convince myself that I was like walking through a doorway or down a corridor or something. And I hadn't had any sensation in my legs for about 45 minutes. So who's to say I wasn't walking down a corridor? You don't know. You weren't there. My mind and my body were separating. So at this point, suddenly I'd get this really intense ringing in my ears. And sometimes the feeling would be so uncomfortable that I'd want to give up there and then. But I've put like an estimate of approximately 45 minutes into this. I'm not going to give up now. And after that, most times I'd get this really weird feeling that the ceiling and the walls were like pulsating closer and further away from me. This sounds so scary now that I'm saying it out loud. It's actually fine because I was just in my room, but now it sounds a bit like a nightmare. Realistically, the rhythm of it was probably just like a sudden awareness of my heartbeat in some way, because that's kind of the speed that it was happening in, but I'm not the science. And then finally, it would feel like my body suddenly lurched backwards and was falling and falling and falling with the ringing still going. And when that faded away, that's when I was in a lucid dream space. The easiest way for me to connect with this like imaginary space that I was now in would be to imagine that I was lying down and the shapes on the backs of my eyelids that I could still kind of see would form into people standing over me lying down. And then I would try to kind of get them into a more human shape and they could help me up, and then the dream would begin. But obviously it's not just as simple as deciding to lucid dream and then everything being plain sailing. There were so many factors that went wrong so many times. Quite often, one of the most frustrating errors that I made was I would be in that dream state and I'd be trying to make those like figures on the backs of my eyelids turn into people who are going to help me up. But then just as I was about to get up, I would just like open my eyes and I'd accidentally open my eyes in real life, and then I'm just looking at the wall after an hour of effort. I was trying to lucid dream most nights at this point, so we're talking about a load of different attempts. I couldn't even give you a figure of how many attempts it took to actually get one success, but I'd imagine the percentage is pretty fucking low. Sometimes either I wasn't in the right frame of mind for it to work, or I just couldn't give it enough time, maybe because I got so frustrated at having to lie still for so long that I'd just give up, turn over and fall into real sleep. But that meant that getting to the ringing ears and like falling backstage was quite far along, and I would get really excited by it. The funniest problem I ran into was where I'd get the ringing ears thing and I'd fall back, and I would get so excited by the fact that I'd gotten to this next stage that my heart rate would increase and I could really feel it, and my heart rate would get so fast with excitement that I would just wake up. And then even if I could get into a proper lucid dream, there were so many other issues that I ran into. A method I developed of creating my environment around me to try and avoid the opening the eyes issue was that I would imagine that I could see through my eyelids. So instead of imagining someone looking over me and then reaching to help me get up, I would imagine that I could see my bedroom lying where I was through my eyelids. And I was in an attic room, so there was like a bit of ceiling here and a window here that was kind of in view of where I was lying down, and I would really concentrate on looking at those through my eyelids. And as my fake room got clearer and clearer and I was confident enough that my body was numb to movement, I could just start moving and get up. But a couple of times even that went kind of wrong. I was asleep, I was in a dream, it was night, and I was in my bedroom and I'd start to move. You know, like when you're really scared and you're trying to get away from something in a dream and you can't run, then you look like that gif of Spider-Man? When I'm super aware that I'm in a dream, all of my movements can feel really like foggy. My limbs and all movements I can see have like this trail of light, like a ghosting effect. But I made it up and I made it out of bed and I was ready to go exploring in this dream world that I'd created. Let's start easy. Let's just make my way out the house. So I walked to my bedroom door, but it just wasn't there. The wall that has the door on was just more wall, which probably has some pretty heavy psychological meaning, but whatever. Logically, this is all my creation. This is all happening because my brain is producing the environment around it. So I could just create a door, right? In theory, probably could have made a door, but I just didn't understand how, and I just wanted to leave. So instinctively, I just put my hands up against the wall, and it just like melted away and like fell away like sand, and I just had to sort of pull a big hole in the wall, shimmy on through. That's one way to get out an escape room. I think the peak level of control that I got to was I could decide where I was and I could decide who was there with me. But I couldn't always control what they did. But I could make a multitude of things happen. And what would you do if you could have anybody in the world in the room with you? The possibilities are literally endless, and they were. But the reason the whole concept has been back in my brain recently is because it's been happening more and more. I haven't been consciously going into lucid dreams right from lying down in my bed and hoping for it, but I have been realizing that something's a dream from within the dream a lot recently. So I guess I'm just going to give it another go, basically. It's a real shame that it's so like normal and everyday to me now, because lucid dreaming, the idea of it, is like incredible. I just think it's interesting. And despite the memes of people hating listening to other people's dreams, I love them. I want to hear all your dreams, all your lucid dream stories. Go. Tiny train coming.